Under the courtesy of the floor. First one is Ms. Gloria Bowman.
Because my name starts with a B?
It was the first one on the pile.
Oh, okay.
It was the first one submitted. I don't know. That's usually how it goes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. I am asking for seeking clarification on pages 9 and 10, letters A and D, under the director's concerns. I'm a little bit confused and perplexed about the two various motions, because as I read in the Times News, the last motion that the board approved for the Franklin Fields, the township decided not to pay for a subdivision, and I see that this motion, once again, letter A, does pay for a subdivision, and then asking or potentially selling them to Franklin Township concerns me, and I'm sure a lot of other residents, about further incurred costs for taxes. And it's my opinion that the board needs seriously to be looking at sustaining positive relationships with both the township and the district, as well as servicing all of our kids within the community. And it appears, and I'm going to say this very carefully, appears that money seems to be a motivating factor. So those two motions sort of, I'm not understanding them. And I was wondering if somebody could clarify either of them. Or maybe it's under the superintendent's report or something else. Thank you.
Well, you're concerned about
The first motion.
Do you want to answer?
I did not put them on there.
To you.
I wouldn't answer because I did not put them on there.
I don't know who put them on.
Ms. Mahalik requested they be put on. First one.
You asked the question about taxes. To whom? Franklin Township? The district?
Franklin residents.
So the Franklin
If the Franklin residents, the Franklin Township said in the newspaper, the township said, we're not going to pay for subdivision because they were afraid that it would be incurred upon the Franklin residents for further taxes. So that motion for letter A is reading very similar again, because it says the Franklin Township would again pay for the subdivision. And then you have another motion saying to sell it to Franklin Township. So if that's even a further cost, my question is, and I don't know what that answer is, what would that look like for taxpayers? And the good of the order, I think you need, my opinion is still, my professional opinion is that intermunicipal transfer is the best all the way around for the kids and for the community and sustaining relationships. So.
When you're talking about taxes, you're talking about your resident of Franklin Township as a month.
Correct.
So when we look at taxes for Franklin Township, that would be done at the supervisor's level.
Correct.
They were concerned, according to the meeting, and
according to the
was that they didn't want to have to pay for the subdivision with a year-to-year lease. If the lease was longer,
according to the newspaper, it was all, and also because of the incurring taxes to the residents.
So now, are you concerned that the paper was correct or the meeting was correct? Which one do we want to talk about?
I'm assuming it was a direct quote
Yeah,
in the newspaper. I was not at the Franklin Township meeting, so.
bad assumption. But the reality is, and Gail, you were there, right? It was really a function of the time, how long the term of the contract of rental was, correct?
That was in the paper. I remember reading that. Year to year. Right.
So if it wasn't year to year, they were more amenable to doing it. Right. And then the other question you were asked about taxes, like an intermunicipal transfer, or so the question is who burdens whom, right? So if you have an intermunicipal transfer, you're burdening the entire Lehighton district.
I don't see it. I don't see how that is possible.
Who owns it?
Who owns it?
Yeah.
Right now, the school district owns it.
So who pays for it? The district. It's part of their assets, right? So if you give away their assets,
It's just there are two motions that I think are very perplexing to me.
well, they might choose to purchase it. That's up to them. It's not within our prerogative what they want to do. It's our prerogative whether or not we want to accept that offer or not.
And I'm just offering a professional opinion and working as a team, and I think too much bad blood is already occurring between the township and the district. And I don't like to see that. I think it would behoove all of us to be able to work together to make sure that our our kids are taken care of properly and so on. I think sometimes sustaining positive relationships with one vote is much better than the almighty dollar, in my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Next, Mr. O'Donnell. Chrisman Field.
Good evening. My name is Kevin O'Donnell, Franklin Township Athletic Association. I'm here tonight to speak as well on behalf on the issues with Chrisman Field. Hopefully tonight we can get something done to the board members. This is the 5th meeting now. It started back in March. Here we are in July. Hopefully we can move to get something done. There's been differing opinions on social media on some of the concern pages for schools and classrooms and so on and so forth that have been following, and it's just a back and forth. However, FTAA has come to meetings with petitions with over 300 taxpayers. We've had the support. The supervisors of Franklin Township held a meeting. There was approximately 70 people there, but everybody spoke on behalf of the association as far as an intermunicipal transfer. As far as the social media goes, there was a video posted by the classrooms page, and quote, right at the 6:38 mark, it says, "The system is broken. The Pennsylvania Department of Education in the school code dictates local control. It talks about stakeholders electing a government for their benefit to allow their input to govern their schools. And we have a board giving that power to the superintendent and the solicitor to run the show. They're taking the people's voice away. They're silenced by a feckless 5. They have spoiled the superintendent and solicitor, giving them free rein to do so, as they please, with little or no oversight." What I'm getting at, can we please get an intermunicipal transfer? That's what the community has spoken. All right? We talk about the feckless 5, but what about the other 4? Why is it against your policy to cross over and maybe give us a 6th vote for the intermunicipal transfer? We've listened. We've done our due diligence. Please, let's get this over with tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Next up would be Mr. Kemmerer, revisions to the handbook.
Let me start out by thanking you for allowing me to speak. Basically, my questions are, with the revisions to the handbook, is this a permanent revision for the next school year, or as the school year progresses, or as situations come about where we maybe clarify on some things, are they updated in the handbook and sent to the parents and sent home to the kids?
The handbooks are online. The elementary handbooks do go home, but the handbooks are online where they're viewed and then they sign off as part of that. They review the handbook and understand, and also part of that is also giving us the right for pictures to use as well. So that's the way the handbook process is completed. The handbook is approved by the board at a meeting, and then once that's approved, it goes to be posted and then move forward. Once that doesn't mean every year there's revisions done from one year to the next, based upon maybe circumstance or law changes as well too. I know most recently truancy was a big one that we had to revise, but that's the process with the handbook.
So my question is, once it is approved, it's set in stone for the next school year. Is that correct?
No, the board can revise the handbook, at any time, and then notification would go out to the parents, probably of what revision was made. Yep.
Are there any revisions on the horizon based on some of the things that have happened and some clarity for perhaps like the cops being in the school? Is there any revisions that had to take place based on those new accounts?
Part of with the school police officers now being in the school, they are held to the same, and that's in my report actually, they are held to the same standards as the borough police. So their rights are the same. So when they're performing their duty as a police officer for the district, they are only allowed to do what the state allows them to do. They don't go by the school code rules. They go by their rules as police officers.
Okay, so moving forward, is there a clear, distinct breakdown as far as what the parents are told as to what their child could be questioned for by a faculty member or what the police officer can do?
Right. The process will be the same as if there's a situation that happens and we contact the local police. Then, depending on the situation, if they are, being formally arrested for whatever has taken place, then of course they would be notified as well.
But is it in the handbook?
No, that is not in the handbook.
Isn't that something that's important moving forward? As like, I have 2 kids in the district. I'm sure I would want to know what because I had to sign it. Mm-hmm. And based on signing that, I'm sort of saying, hey, I'm okay with what you're proposing. So if your proposal isn't quite right yet, how can we vote on it if it's not up to where we're
going? Guidelines are set by the state for the school police officers now that they've been accepted. I'll go through and I won't read this again, but I'll read it to you.
But is that available for the parents in the handbook?
Not at this point. It has not been. No.
Is that fair to a parent to
We will
sign off
notify
on
them.
it?
We just got the letter just recently, as recent as July 16th. That they were approved because we had court and had to go through that. So yeah, we will be notifying all the parents that they will be here, and they have the same rights. So it will be listed. The school board doesn't set what they can and can't do. This the law.
I understand that.
It. So they are able, just for clarification, they may detain, arrest, and issue summary citations. In addition, they will have the power to enforce good order in school buildings, grounds, and buses for the Lehighton Area School District. So that's basically, in a nutshell, their guidelines are set because by the police officers. So whatever guidelines in a school the Lehighton Borough Police have to abide by, their guidelines are exactly the same, even though they're still, working with the district.
Because I've been reading a lot about searching kids and things of that nature, and I know that it's a clear, distinct difference between what a faculty member can do and what a police officer can do. But I did see many cases where it gets convoluted, and there's a lot of gray areas when it comes to that if it's not spelled out. Like extensive searches, what a faculty member is able to do up to and including. I don't want to split hairs, but what happened with my kid, I just want to make sure that as a parent, I know that my son could be subjected to this and up to that. I don't think the area where students' rights is expanded upon enough, because I don't think that the kids actually know what their rights are when they show up at school and when they are questioned by a superior, principal or vice principal. And I think that needs to be expanded upon, or at least explored, because I think the kids are at an unfair advantage. And parents signing off on this vague policy or vague searches isn't fair for the student or the parent.
Thank you. Next would be Barbara Bowes, 2 motions on Chrisman and recreational fields.
Okay, I understand that we have 2 motions on the agenda, and I understand why the first one was put on there. I know that Franklin Township had an issue with not having any guarantees for any length of time should they pay for the subdivision. At the last meeting, it was stated that there was no meets and bounds. I have one. It was done in 1991. Mr. Schwab was the solicitor at the time. It was taken from an actual survey of Chrisman Field that was done in 1987. It is a legal description. I don't know if that would help and maybe save some cost. But it's here. And Franklin Township has had it because it came from a right to know from Franklin Township. On the other one, I would like some clarification on what recreation fields means.
Just for clarification, we did receive a letter from the Franklin Township Board of Supervisors that they've discussed the subdivision of Chrisman Field and have decided they do not want a year-tier lease agreement and pay for the subdivisions. However, the supervisor would like to purchase the recreational fields if it is the board's intent to pay for an appraisal to be done on the properties. So we are asking that if the Lehighton Area School District should be willing to sell the properties to Franklin Township, please advise us of your decision. So that letter came from the supervisor. So from this reading of this letter, I would say that it's pretty evident that they do not want to lease the property at all.
Well, that's fine, but they say recreational fields. There's no clarification in there as to what that should include.
Crisbin ball fields.
Just the ball fields.
According to this, they discussed the subdivision of Crisbin ball fields.
And that was my question, is the second motion was vague. It just says recreation fields.
Well, that's what is in their letter. That's why we...
Okay,
Yeah.
but, I mean, it needs to be spelled out, for the stakeholders.
Excuse me, Mr. Cleaver, for 30 years I was told that we were leasing that property that the district owned for $1 a year to the township, and that lease is still ongoing. Is that correct? Nothing has stopped that lease.
Correct. No, but according to this, they do not want a year-to-year lease agreement.
I understand that, but currently there's a lease agreement on the books for that property that we own as a district that's listed in her meets and bounds that was filed and found by the right to know.
Mm-hmm.
So when they were here and asked for everything to stay consistent, there's no reason that you would have to do a subdivision to continue that lease agreement.
If we were to sell the building, you'd have to do something.
At the time in which the building would be sold, either that person buying the building could do that subdivision, or the district could do that subdivision at that time.
Or the township and kids could lose the fields altogether. Correct.
I highly doubt that, just like Mr. O'Donnell said, that a survey was done within the community and we're supposed to be stakeholders to the community, that no matter what, we want to make sure that those kids have that field. We even had a vote here that made sure, well, the four of us voted to make sure that those kids kept those fields. So the only risk we have currently is the fact that if the district financial situation gets into a spot where the state comes in and says, we're taking over because we're deep in debt.
Can I ask a question here? If we sell the school, which hopefully we will, can it not be stated in the contract of sale that Chrisman Field does not go with the school?
Absolutely.
There would still have to be a subdivision.
Well, yes, I understand that. And I said last time when I was here, I thought the district should pay for it. They're retaining the property.
That is a possibility. I mean, but I can't guarantee that the board would approve or that any buyer would agree to it either. I mean, so
Well, the
there's a
buyer
lot of-
doesn't have to pay for it.
I think that they're to understand a little bit easier and to make everyone see the reason the transfer came up is because it was looked at as a win-win for the kids, for the kids in the district. We'd be able to subdivide it. The township would get the fields. It'd be a minimal cost. I did reach out. We already had a survey done of that property several years ago. Barry Ice and Associates did the survey. They're looking at a $4,000 cost for the subdivision for that property. So, for the township to take ownership of that field, would probably cost about $5,000 because there'd be legal fees, and I would estimate about $5,000.
Well, on the Barry Isett subdivision, in where it describes it, it says Chrisman Fields.
It would be subdivided in
Yeah, but it
sections.
also says East Penn Township on it. It does not say Franklin Township.
On the east. I'm sorry.
On the subdivision, on the survey they did, it states on it, it says Franklin Elementary School.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I would have to double look and see.
Yeah, it says East Penn Township because
Okay.
I did look.
Yeah.
I think that was just a mistake by Barry Isett. I mean, it has
Yeah,
to
but
be,
I
right?
just don't know.
It has to be.
They would have to correct it, I would assume,
Yeah.
or it could be an
absolutely.
issue.
Well, as part of subdivision, it would be a whole totally different process
Okay,
anyway.
so you couldn't use like an already used survey, you would have to redo it?
Well, I can't answer that. From what I understand, they'd be able to use a lot of the information they already have. I mean, technically, the district owns the survey to begin with.
Right.
So it's so I'm sure they'd be able to use some of that information that we currently have.
I mean, because in this meets and bounds agreement, it gives all the markers, all the pins, everything. It's a legal description,
Right.
the same way as a deed would be.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bradley?
But just back on this Franklin Township, when you sell a property, we could describe what's going to be sold. It could be described as Franklin Township minus those meets and bounds as part of the advertising, which has not yet occurred. Is that correct? No one advertised yet? Okay, so you could actually advertise what you're actually selling without actually having it subdivided at that time so that they would know what they're purchasing in the event that they have an interest of purchasing.
Yeah, but I think at the time of the purchase, that would all have to be ironed out.
Correct, at which point those costs could either be with the purchaser, the district, or the township.
Sure, Jason.
But the reason the lease doesn't work is we have it now for 99 years. But it hasn't, we have the lease now for 99 years, correct?
I don't know.
Correct. Well, every year it has to be approved.
Correct.
So how do we know each year it comes up for approval what you guys will do? And we don't know. So if we pay for the subdivision, next year it's, oh, we're gonna give it to this person. Well, now we're out that money, correct?
According to
So it
Mr.
doesn't-
Schwab, it's a year-to-year now.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether you put 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 99 years, each year it has to be approved, correct, right?
That's what I understand.
Okay, so what we decided was instead of you going through all this mess and everything, because for some reason you have an issue with the township for an intermunicipal transfer, correct? You don't want to give it to us for $1, but you'll give it to other people.
We have a responsibility to the district to which elected us. Yes, it's their asset. It is their asset. And not 70 people or 700 people, but there's thousands of people in that district that own that parcel that paid their taxes at the end of a sheriff's gun to own those fields for the benefit of those kids. So if they want to keep them and own them, to give them to the kids to ensure that they're going to do that, which they have been since their origination, and all the effort that those townspeople put in to keep those fields, that's the best. Now, the only way to really guarantee that is that this board is financially stable, and that's been the dilemma that you're actually feeling right now. Right, that's why you're here. Right. Correct, and I think you have that as a motion. Right. I recommended that the FTAA bought them. They could have bought them as a right. And actually, we also recommended that they could have been given to them directly. They didn't want them. So.
Can I ask a question since Jason was talking? I found the letter to be a little bit vague. I could not hear what you were saying. Can you define what was meant by recreation?
I just did, both of them, the Crispin and the soccer.
Okay,
That's not what he said.
that's not what he said.
He put down recreational fields, so that it's all recreational fields that are limited to school.
But hold on, Mr. Cleaver, you just said a couple minutes ago it was just the Franklin ball fields.
That's what I did, yes, sir, correct.
Okay, so
I just had clarification.
I know. So is the motion changing to more than the ball fields?
Well, we didn't even get to the motion.
I know, but we're talking about the motion. This is why public comment is available under the Sunshine Act, is so that people can clarify and make sure that they have all the information pertinent to the decision of government and your government making the decision.
So recreation fields are referencing the soccer fields then as well.
For Mr. Fry, yes.
We were supposed to state it, otherwise.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, Mr. Wortman.
In comment about, since this is about the whole district, the Heighton district is concerned, if I'm under the right impression that everyone in our school district plays on this little league team. So what's the if you're representing the Lehighton School District and concerned about the taxpayers of Lehighton School District, shouldn't it not be said that all the kids from Mahoning, East Penn, Lehighton, they all participate over in Franklin ball fields? So why should it not So this idea that we're speaking about the whole district, no. We're just saying Franklin. Let them change their name then to Lehighton School District, because they do represent all of Lehighton School District as far as the kids are concerned, and of the taxpayers concerned. So I believe seriously that we should be looking at what is good for all the kids in our district. And that means allowing Franklin Township to have them ball fields.
And Tom, I think we all are in agreement with that, except for the fact that if Franklin Township subdivides and pays for it or buys the fields, they own them, and the taxpayers of Franklin are the only ones paying for them. Whereas I agree, everyone uses them. That's why the benefit of the lease that we currently have is a value to all, because it was the district that owns them, and it is the district kids that are using them.
But again, you keep saying the districts, the district as a whole. Franklin Township wants to take over. Let Franklin Township take them, and let the kids of Lehighton all benefit by this.
Walter?
You stated it's $5,000 to subdivide that piece of ground.
No, the proposal from Barry, I said, when we reached out to get an estimate of what it may cost, was $4,000. And I saying $5,000 because I'm sure there'd be legal fees.
And there's how many in the district that pay taxes? More than 10,000 people, 50 cents a person.
I don't know.
To keep our asset and let the kids play in that field? Is that like common sense for a $5,000 decision? Correct.
But the township from this letter is not interested.
No, that's
not the point.
That's not the point. Walter, that's not the point. It's the point of the supervisors don't want to have the same agreement that they have right now. They want to have the agreement of ownership. For 4 months, though, they argued to get the same agreement they have, and that's what we provided to them. For months, they argued to have the intermunicipal transfer where they completely owned it from the district, would provide it to the township, take ownership, and that's the way it would move forward.
Yeah, but we agree that's immoral to the township.
No, it's not. I didn't agree it's immoral to the tax base.
Okay.
You might have agreed. I agree that it's immoral to make Franklin Township pay for that property.
That's what I just said. So let's
what was
raise 5,000 ourselves.
That's still not the point. Well,
if it's immoral, ask the township to pay for it.
No, I'm talking about for the property itself.
I believe it was discussed
whole
that
property.
the township is concerned that next year it could change. Decisions could change.
And you'd be in the same spot if you did an intermunicipal transfer. If the township ran into if the district ran into issues, there's a revert clause on that.
I think that's the biggest concern the township has.
Yeah,
is
there's
in
a
your
revert
statements.
clause.
There's a lot of ifs, and I think with them owning it and having the ownership, it takes the ifs of the school board totally away from the situation.
And if the association purchased it, which is a community-based, it would take all the ifs of all government out of baseball.
We'll be talking about this again in a little while. So, Mr. Bradley, you're up for courtesy of the floor with policy handbook.
One comment to add to that. I don't know where what's his name lives, but presently the taxpayers in Franklin Township are paying the costs for the kids to play there. Not all the kids from Lehighton area. There are kids from all over, but only Franklin Township residents are paying for the mowing, the maintenance, the insurance, and the lights. And I don't really have a problem with that, but it is not spread over the whole district. Just so you're clarified for that.
Mr. Mahoney, that's not the deal. The association puts a lot of money into that deal.
3,000. I know that. And the township pays about 8,000.
I don't have my papers right now, but you were at the same meeting I was.
I was.
Totally wrong.
Yeah, if I could, you're way out there, Gail. That's all I can say.
Okay, what are the numbers?
Okay, the last time I was president, we wrote a check for $3,800 for the light bill for all 3 fields that have lights. So where you come up with 3,000 total, and we did a lot of mowing. We worked with the supervisors. They worked with us. It was great for 39 years. Now, I heard here tonight 4 board members voted for the kids. Really? Back in March, I thought 5 of us voted for the kids for this intermunicipal transfer. It's simple. Let's have a vote. We need one of you people to change your mind. It's done. Kevin, you got your fields. Jason, you're good to go. Let's go. Let's have a vote. We got 5. Who's the 6th one?
It's not for Kevin and Jason, it's for the kids.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, Jason, what are the numbers?
What other numbers?
Yes.
You know, my son played basketball over in Highland. Played football down in Fairlawn. I didn't get charged any extra because he didn't live in New Highland.
I'm not saying charging extra. What are Franklin Township residents paying?
Everybody doesn't pay. It's unfair.
What Jason's saying is Bear Memorial is a borough park,
Right.
and the Lehighton Borough residents are paying taxes on that.
Absolutely am.
Exactly.
I paid on the rec center, I paid on the Grove,
But
paid on the
Franklin
pool.
Township, Mahoning Township, Perryville, and East Penn Township residents, their children are playing football and baseball at Bear Memorial. That's
Exactly.
And they're using the community pool.
Right. No.
Just need one of yous. Which one is it? I heard user for the kids. Let's hear it.
Wait, Wayne. So two things. Two things, Wayne. First of all, they're all for the Wayne. They're all for the kids. The parents are the ones that write the check, not the kids, and you know it.
Okay.
We'll talk about it as we move through the agenda. Mr. Bradley?
Okay. So, is this on? Yeah. It is? Okay, good. Are you sure?
Yeah, sure.
Because I listened to the audio and it really didn't sound too good. Okay, so we got a student handbook that was given to us for approval. And after reviewing it in relationship to the school policy, which is school law, and the law that the citizens and the students and the administration are to follow, created by the board, are missing a lot of things. So before we approve this handbook, I think that the policy committee should review the handbook in a meeting publicly, openly, and go through this because it has been dogmatic and it is missing a lot of things that happened recently that we should be reviewed. I looked at the policy and I tried to find the word search. And the only reference I could find was in reference to searching a locker. And I was going to ask Melissa if she could pull it up on the internet quickly, because you can actually do a search, right? But you don't have to do it now, but if you can, it's awesome. And that was pretty much what it looked at. We had a student that was frisked, and then some of his clothes were removed to find a potential tobacco product because he was outed by someone else falsely. And I can't find anywhere in this policy where we were allowed to do that. And I know that there's nowhere in this handbook that says that these kids are at risk of that happening to them. And I know these parents that sign this don't have that either. So if we're frisking kids, and if we're telling them to remove clothes to find contraband that's not, and Mr. Filer, if you could help, not eminently dangerous to the individual or their peers, I don't know what law we're using to do what you guys are doing now. So these should be reviewed prior to our board as government telling these people what they are and are not going to follow as a law. And we should recognize that these are laws, and therefore they have to be applied unilaterally to all the students, which I'm also finding tremendous amount of testimony from people within the community that these laws are not applied unilaterally. It's very selective enforcement by a whole group of individuals. And I think that should be reviewed. And I think it should be done publicly. And the letters that I sent earlier, thank you, we will go through during the meeting. Please.
Thank you. Move on to communications.